Welcome to the 2026 K-State Garden Hour webinar series. We're so glad that you are here. This webinar series started in 2020 and has been a collaboration of the entire K-State Extension Horticulture team. Since the start of the program, we have reached over 113,000 gardeners just like you. We are pleased to continue offering the K-State Garden Hour series for free. If you have enjoyed these educational webinars, please consider making a tax-deductible donation to support this program. The link to donate can be found in the chat or on our K-State Garden Hour website. The webinar is hosted by Kansas State Extension. My name is Calla Edwards, and I am the Horticulture Extension Agent for Butler County. Everyone involved in the development of this series is an extension professional for K-State. Most of us have a background in horticulture education or a related discipline, but most of all, we each have a love for educating and sharing important gardening topics. Before we get started, we do have a couple housekeeping notes to cover. Please use the Q&A feature for questions related to the presentation. This is where we will look for questions at the end of the webinar during the Q&A series. You can see a button along the bottom of the tab that says Q&A. Just click on it and you'll be able to enter your question. Today's webinar will be recorded and we will post it to our K-State Garden Hour website. We typically upload additional resources related to each topic, and if we share links through the chat, we will also link them to the website. Our website is also where you'll have access to previous topics and see the upcoming topics in the series. Our moderators today are Annie Baker and Lane Weens. They will be sharing information through the chat during the presentation. They're also going to help us facilitate the Q&A portion of the webinar. Today's topic is maximizing garden success with extension resources. I'm excited to introduce our co-speakers today, Cassie Thiessen and Matthew McKernan. Please give us a few minutes while we transition and share the presentation slides.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to today's K-State Garden Hour. We're thrilled that you're with us here today. My name is Matthew McKernan, and I am the Consumer Horticulture Extension Associate with Kansas State University. I work for the Department of Horticulture and Natural Resources and am based in Wichita, Kansas, out of our John C. Payer Horticultural Research Center down here. I'm thrilled to be able to co-present today with Mrs. Cassie Thiessen, and I'll let her introduce herself here too.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cassie Thiessen. I am the horticulture agent for the Post Rock District of K-State Extension. Post Rock District is 5 counties in north central Kansas, and my home office is in Beloit.
We are both thrilled that you're here with us today and look forward to hopefully sharing some great information with you today. To kind of give you an idea of what to expect today, we're going to start out by talking about why research-based information is important and why we should even care at all. After that, we're going to introduce 5 of the extension resources that Cassie and I use every single day. And so we'll talk about some of those resources, how they're structured, and how you can use them. And we really also hope to practice using some of those resources as we go through today. So as you're able, we hope that you'll join us with some of the links we share in the chat and actually exploring and using these resources as we go along with today's presentation. We'll also at the end show some other helpful resources that we hope you can explore on your own, and of course hope to have some time at the end to answer questions from you as well today. Ideally, though, the goal for today's presentation is to help you become a problem solver. When people tell you that you're going to regret that in the morning, sleep till noon. There's more than one way to solve some of our problems. But when it comes to our landscape and gardening questions, often it's not that easy. And so we hope to share with you some useful resources to problem solve today as well. So to get started, we're curious, what are some of the favorite research-based gardening resources that you use from K-State or other universities? If you take a minute to share some of those in the chat, we're curious what resources you're already frequently using and familiar with, whether that's from K-State or other universities across the United States. We're curious to hear from you. So if you want to take a minute and just share in the chat, we would love to hear from you today. Looks like several people are using the K-State Bookstore, Missouri Botanical Garden, the Kansas Garden Guide. That'll be one we talk about a little bit more later today. Love Tomatoes and Carrots books, Kansas Garden Guide. Excellent. Well, please feel free to continue sharing some of those resources. We will continue reviewing them, but want to keep going with today's presentation as well. And so I'll turn it over to Cassie to talk about why research-based information is important.
All right, thank you. Um, yeah, so hopefully everybody understands that research information is very important when we're talking about gardening. Scientific research is a critical tool to help navigate our complex world. We live in a very complicated world with lots of information. So if we're not relying on scientific research, we're either relying on our own intuition. That's just how we feel. Maybe we're making decisions without much reasoning or thought, or we might rely on other people's authority. So that's that mother knows best. Maybe our grandma always gardened in a certain way, so we have to follow that tradition. Or maybe we're just relying on blind luck. That's just, we're hoping for the best. And that's not necessarily the best approach when we're trying to garden in Kansas. So you can go to the next slide. So this is how the world feels sometimes, but gardening can help. And it can help if we are using good resources and gardening in the correct way. So in this day and age, we are often overwhelmed with information. But more information does not necessarily mean better informed. And it's not enough just to have the information, but we also have to know how to apply it to have a successful garden. So sometimes we're overly confident in our skills and our abilities to interpret and interact with the world around us. But scientific research really allows us to test those ideas and to gain an objective understanding. So this slide shows a kind of simplified version of the scientific method. I hope everybody has learned about that. I feel like that was back in our elementary school days. We would have a question, right? We wanted to observe something. And then we would use that to make a prediction. So that was our hypothesis. That was that if-then statement. So maybe if I put this much fertilizer on my tomatoes, then they're going to grow this much more than my non-fertilized tomatoes. And then the best part of that is then we get to test it. We get to do the experiment and get the research. So that is that tangible data that we can use. And the good thing about scientific research is that it's grounded in tangible evidence, and it can be observed time and time again, no matter who's doing the experiment. And that's important because our programs, we really strive to provide unbiased, research-based information that you can trust, because there's lots of home remedies out there, lots of DIYs, and we don't necessarily want to follow those ways. And the bad thing about social media, in this video, we have no idea what's going on. There's no context or clarity. Yeah, so it maybe is entertaining, but it's not necessarily good educational information because we have no idea what he was trying to do, no clarity or connection. But our programs at K-State really strive to provide that clarity. So as gardeners, I know it's really tempting to do whatever it takes to fix the problem, right? I garden in Kansas too. I know it can be tough. And we've all been there. We want a quick fix. So here is another home remedy that we see often spread on social media sites or online. And this is advertising a 3-ingredient weed killer, and it says it works. And can this information be wrong? Well, the problem is none of these products are labeled for plants. So we have no idea the consistency of how much to use, what brands to use. They're simply not recommended for plants. On the left-hand side, we have vinegar, and this is just food grade vinegar from the grocery store. So that's only about 5% acetic acid. That's not going to do much to kill weeds in your landscape. You can buy horticulture grade vinegar, which is a little bit stronger. But again, vinegar is just not the best tool because it doesn't move through the plant readily. So it might kill down the tops of the weeds, but it's not going to do anything for the roots. And then it shows dish soap. Those are designed to strip grease, and they can really ruin the waxy cuticle of plants. so they're going to kill plants that are your desirable plants as well. And then the salt is just, there's lots of issues with that. It's really going to destroy the structure of your soil. It can cause water to not be able to infiltrate down into your soil. So if you do need a good advice on killing weeds in your garden or landscape, K-State has some really great resources that we'd be happy to provide you. Okay, and then this next one is another one I saw on Facebook not too long ago. This is suggesting a home remedy as a quick fix for blossom end rot to use Tums or a antacid tablet down in the hole and then plant your tomato. And it says that it's a cheap and effective way to fix blossom end rot. So a couple things with this post. It's from Home and Gardening Tips. So we have no idea who the author is, what their credentials are. And then unfortunately it was shared and liked a lot of times on Facebook, and it's just not good advice. So it's very rare in Kansas for our soils to be calcium deficient. I definitely recommend getting a soil test. Make sure you know what your soil has and what it's lacking, but it is very rare for our soils. So blossom end rot is the inability of the plant to move that calcium up to the fruit, and it's often caused by a sudden change in weather conditions, maybe drought stress, maybe too much water, all things we deal with lots in Kansas. So thankfully, it's a condition that often corrects itself. Okay, so now that you've seen a couple kind of bad advice, how do you feel in your ability to find reliable information online? Are you feeling good? Or maybe you had fallen for some of those home remedies. Let us know in the chat. Okay, so the problem really is that anybody can search for information in seconds, and we get so much information, and we have a lot of advice everywhere. And so it leads to information overload, and that can really be stressful. And so at K-State, we want to provide practical solutions to those gardening problems you might be dealing with. So actually, one of the horticulture agents, Jay Harris, wrote a really great article comparing Google versus K-State Extension. So we'll put that in the chat as well if you want to go read it later. But basically, Google can give you information and not necessarily the wrong information, but K-State gives you application and context and trust. So we're really hoping to provide you with practical solutions. So at K-State University, our foundation is teaching, research, and extension. So K-State Extension provides information that's grounded in that university research that's evidence-based and designed to improve your outcomes. And in an age of miscommunication, when you're getting bombarded, that really is helpful to have information you can trust. So as an extension agent, our job is to take that scientific research and help homeowners comprehend it. And also make this good quality information more accessible, hopefully more accessible than those DIY home remedies. So the next slide shows, this was a very practical research example that one of our local extension units conducted. So basically they tested tree growth in common turf versus mulch. So you can see there on the right side, they grew two different types of trees, red buds and pecans, in mulch. And this is organic mulch, like wood chips or wood bark. And then they compared that to bare soil and then fescue, Bermuda, and Kentucky bluegrass. So three different turf conditions. And they found that the mulch trees actually grew 2 to 3 times more than the trees surrounded by the turf. So here is a picture of the roots. The tree on the left there is the redbud tree grown in the mulch plot and the wood chips. And then the tree on the right is the tree grown in the tall fescue plot. So you can see so much root growth difference as well. That tree on the right, that's probably those roots, same roots you bought when you got it from the nursery. Those were the ones growing in that pot. So mulching is such an easy, practical thing homeowners can do, and it makes a huge difference for your tree growth and tree health. Okay, so my next slide, I asked the question, can Google be wrong? You probably have your own opinions on this, and I was honestly kind of scared to put this out there. I don't want Google to come for me. But I asked the question, what's the best type of cucumber to grow in my garden? I asked that to Google, And as you know, probably the first thing we all see now that pops up is this AI overview. And the problem with that is AI overview is pulling from all over the web. So it can pull from Facebook, from Reddit, from TikTok, anywhere. And it also uses a very confident tone. So it sounds very authoritative, even when it might be wrong. So you can see my results showed the first result here is actually a TikTok. And then the second source it pulled from was a nursery. And the nursery is likely trying to sell me their cucumbers, so they might be a little biased. But then I kept scrolling down on Google and I found this almost a disclaimer here. And it said that generative AI is a work in progress. So the information quality may vary. So even Google is saying that this isn't necessarily wrong information, but it might vary. So the only thing I would say with this AI overview is don't take it verbatim. Always double check the sources. So how can we use Google more efficiently or our search engines? I know we're still going to do it. I still use Google, but I want to help us do it more efficiently and more effectively. So you can add phrases such as KSU, extension, site:/.edu. You can put parentheses around a word such as of Kansas. So if I maybe typed in cucumbers for Kansas, I probably would have got better search results. And then here in this picture, I typed in controlling potato beetles and I added extension. So you see, I still got that AI overview, but the first source it pulled from was Minnesota Extension. So that's a source I trust probably a little better than that TikTok video on the last picture. Okay, so how do we know if we can trust a website? Websites that end in .edu are university websites, so they should have good research-based information. .gov is government websites, and .org is an organization. So this Missouri Botanical Garden website is a .org. It's one I use probably every day as an extension agent, and I know they have good scientific information that I can trust. So again, I feel like I kind of was dogging on social media. It's not a bad thing. It's a great tool to keep up with your family, your friends, to have some entertainment. But if you're looking for good, reliable educational information, these are the websites that are the best. So how do you determine if information is reliable? There's a quick test you can do called the CRAP test. So the first one is C for currency. So what is the timeliness of the information? When was it published? Has it been updated? Next is relevance. What is the importance of the information for your needs? So if we're looking at a YouTube video where they're gardening in California and I'm taking their advice on everything, even the planting dates, I'm probably going to be disappointed because gardening in Kansas is very different. What is the authority? Who's providing that information? Do they have a degree in horticulture or a related field, or are they just a first-time gardener sharing their information out on a blog? What is the accuracy? Is it reliable, truthful, or correct? Um, Again, we want it to be grounded in research-based evidence. And then what is the purpose? Why are they putting this information out there? Are they trying to teach me how to garden? Are they trying to sell me something? Are they trying to entertain me or persuade me a certain way? Okay, and then lastly, I wanted to share this podcast. Our wildlife specialists put together a podcast called Fins, Fur, and Feathers. And they had a really great episode on social media misinformation. So we can put that link in the chat and you can go watch it on your own time. But they had this really great example of this post here that was on Facebook. And it's a very AI generated photo. It's a raccoon and a skunk, and it says, "Your kindness keeps us alive." So basically, they're saying that homeowners need to provide these animals with shelter and food over the winter to keep them alive. So the thing with this post is it really triggers our emotions. We have built-in human empathetic responses, and we might feel bad for these animals. But following the advice on this post will lead to a lot more problems for you in the future than if you followed the post. So it's not recommended to feed them.
Perfect. And just to kind of drive this point home, we have one more example that we'd like you all to do for us today. Whether you use Google or a resource, your favorite book, whatever it is, take a minute and see if you can find about information about powdery mildew, and is it a problem on corn? When you have a minute to find an example or an answer from whatever resource you use, take a minute and share that response in the chat with us today. This is a great example to kind of drive home the point of what Cassie's been talking about the importance of using research-based information. My guess is we're going to have a wide variety of answers that come back in the chat. So whether you just search online powdery mildew corn or type in a whole sentence, again, doesn't matter. I want everybody to kind of search it however you would normally search a problem that you would have in your own backyard. And we'll give everybody just a few seconds to do so because we want to look at what some of the recommendations and answers that you get back are. As you're doing that, again, want to continue to encourage you to look up powdery mildew on corn. But to just kind of give you an example of some of the examples that I found searching this into Google over and over and over again, what you'll notice is Google gave me very different answers in their AI overview every time I searched it. The more I searched it, the more varied that answer became. It started off saying that powdery mildew is white cottony dust and fungal growth on stalks, leaves, and husk, and that it's very damaging if left unmanaged. Then some of my results said it's rare in field corn, but can affect sweet corn. Then some of my answers said that it's thrives in warm, humid conditions, but is relatively rare, and is more common on other products like wheat or things like that, and that we should maybe look for other look-alike diseases like corn smut or downy mildew. But one of the interesting things about powdery mildew as a disease on corn is it's a disease that simply doesn't exist. If you look at any of our scientific literature, and I've spoken with our plant pathology department and their literature reviews, and there really is not a disease of powdery mildew on corn that's ever been documented. That's not to say that it maybe never could happen, but if we look at some of those AI overviews that we get in the last slide, we could really expect powdery mildew to be a very damaging disease. Eventually, diving into deeper AI modes and asking the same question over and over and over and asking AI, "Are you sure?" It eventually apologized to me and said, "No, corn does not get powdery mildew." So, we may be able to get the right answer, but how many times would we have had to search that same information? The other thing that we look at is when some of these sources that the AI overview pulls from, we've got lots of different YouTube videos, we've got Bare Crop Science, gardening know-how all over the place when it comes to the information that it's pulling these AI overviews from. And really that, I think, affects the results that we're getting as well. So where can we go to find some good research-based extension resources? This is going to be our top 5 list. For our digital folks out here who are on their phone, on their computer, the K-State Horticulture Resource Center would be one of the great resources I'd recommend that you start with. You can either search Horticulture Resource Center with the letters KSU at the end and it pops right up. We'd encourage you to check out this website today as we go through it. You can use the QR code here on your screen or type in the website address at the bottom. There's a lot of great information that we try to curate for you and put all of our research-based information in one place that's easily navigable and finding information made easy. The first section of this resource that I really encourage you to check out is our horticulture newsletter. This is a newsletter that I put out every week. Typically, it's sent out on Tuesdays, and it's a free newsletter covering a wide variety of what's going on in the Kansas landscape, some of the diseases, insect pests that we're dealing with, but also some of the hot topics of what you need to be doing for planting or pruning or deadheading during each week of the growing season. We typically send this newsletter out every week from April through September, and then a little bit more sporadically during the winter months when there's a little less gardening going on outside. You can find this horticulture newsletter every week on our website, or you can sign up to have that newsletter emailed to you as well. To sign up, all you need to do is email hortsupport@ksu.edu and include in your email address or include in your email the email address that you want the newsletter sent to you. And again, every Tuesday we'll send that out to you so that you can follow along with what's going on in the garden outside and what maybe you should be doing. Some of the other great resources on the Horticulture Information Center or the Horticulture Resource Center is the Common Plant and Pest Problems Fact Sheet. And this is a website that I use every single day because it really takes some of the most common problems we see in the landscape and gives you information about the life cycle of that problem and specifically what we need to do to solve that problem. These fact sheets are organized by topics, so trees and shrubs, fruits and veggies, turf and ornamental plants, and then a master list of all of the topics that are covered. So I want to try an example with how we would use this Common Plant and Pest Problems Fact Sheet Locator. So again, if you haven't pulled up the website already, would encourage you to do so. There's a link in the chat. You can use the QR code on the screen. And let's look at a real life problem we might be having on our plants right now. Right now, we could be out and about on our pine trees and seeing all of these little caterpillar-like insects that are feeding on the needles of the leaf, making those needles disappear. So I think the big question is, what is this and what do I need to do about it? So one way that we can find that information is going to our Common Plant and Pest Problems section of our Horticulture Resource Center. And there's two ways that we could look it up. We could go to the Tree and Shrub Problem section because we know we're dealing with a pine tree. We could also go under the All Pests section, and typically that's where I go just to get as many results as I can. What it's going to take us to is the list of hundreds of different common problems that'll be found on our trees, shrubs, flowers, and in our gardens. It's going to include a wide variety of insects and diseases. And right at the top, there's a search bar that really helps make it easy to narrow down what a problem might be. So for our example, we know that we're dealing with a pine tree. So use keywords like pine to help narrow down that problem. If we type in just the word pine at the top of the screen, that's going to narrow down all of those fact sheets down to just the top 12 results of the most frequently experienced pine problems in Kansas. If we take another look at the insect pest we're dealing with, we're going to see that the option that matches most closely is the European pine sawfly. We'll be able to click read more there and learn more about where this pest might be found, what kind of plants. We'll be able to learn a little bit of information about its life cycle, and then some very specific recommendations on what we can do to control that insect pest, and specific products we might be able to go to the garden center and nursery and look for to be able to control that pest problem. In addition to this, we also have information on our publications. We've got all of our publications from K-State organized by topic. And then you can also find recommendations for plant material, how to contact your local extension agent, and how to get to the K-State bookstore to find more publications on other topics. If you've got questions about our Horticulture Resource Center, you can put them in our chat or in the Q&A, and our team will be able to answer some of those questions for you. Another quick resource that we want to share is the Tree and Shrub Problems in Kansas book. This book I keep at my fingertips every single day and is one that I use all the time. Again, it's located through our K-State bookstore, or you can just search online for Tree and Shrub Problems and then put in the letters KSU and it's going to pop right up. This book is organized in very easy to follow ways. The beginning and end of the book, pages Roman numerals 1 through 10 and 11 through 20, are going to be full color photos of some of the most common insects, diseases, and environmental problems. Once we continue farther into the book, the hard copy page numbers 1 through 21 will give us more in-depth information about some of the common insects, diseases, and plant health strategies we can use to improve our garden. A lot of these problems that we experience with our trees and shrubs are typically environmental related, and so there's some really good information about all of these environmental stresses that we can experience on our plant. Because the reality is over 60% of the questions we get through extension are problems that are either caused by the environment, like the weather, or site factors such as our soil or our watering practices. And so this book really helps outline most of those frequent problems. But if we do have a disease, something that has a susceptible host, the favorable environmental conditions, and the pathogen or the host plant itself, we fall into this category of disease that we could experience on our plants. So what I really love about this resource is the middle section of this book, pages 22 to 80. All of the common trees and shrubs that we can have in our landscape are organized by host plant from A to Z, and they give us both the most common problems, the most common insects, and the most common environmental conditions. And then they give us a really brief summary, essentially, of what those symptoms might look like on the plant. And then there's also a few recommendations on what we might do to combat that problem if we experienced it in the plant. So on this page here, 37, all of these problems are frequently found on euonymus, and these are typically the problems we would experience in this column, and these would be the symptoms we would look for. So to give you a quick idea here, they're organized first by diseases, then by the insect and mites that might affect that plant, and then the environmental, cultural, and other problems that might be experienced by that plant. So again, we want to practice with one real life example. The one downside of this resource is it does require you to be able to identify the tree or the shrub you're working with. But as long as you know that what kind of tree or shrub you're working with, it really is going to provide you a list of the most common problems to help start really eliminating potential solutions. So again, you have to know that this Christmas tree is not a pre-lit willow tree to be able to find good information, but it really can help us identify what these problems are to really narrow down to what is your problem, not necessarily all the problems that are out there. So again, just a real quick example, we have this euonymus shrub here. If you want to open up the tree and shrub problems book, that's going to be pages 49 and 50 on the PDF. And basically we want to know what's causing the dropping of leaves, the bare branches, and the browning of leaves that we see throughout the plant. If we look at this example a little bit more up close, we're going to see all of these things attached to the leaves. We see some yellowing through the leaf and all of these white and black specks on the leaf as well. So if we go and open up our tree and shrub problems in Kansas book, open it to the euonymus section on pages 37 and 38 of the book, or 49 and 50 of the PDF, we're going to see all of these most common problems. And so you see in the poll that's popped up the 7 most common problems that we experience with euonymus. And pretty quickly we can eliminate some of them, like crown gall, which develop large woody galls on the root collar and roots. We've got more of a leaf problem, so that's probably not it. Powdery mildew is a white powdery fungal growth on the leaf surface. Again, we don't really see a white powder, so that's probably not it either. Then we also have some insect problems, euonymus scale, two-spotted spider mites, as well as iron chlorosis and winterkill on the next page as well. So if we take one more up-close look at this, we're likely through those descriptions to think that this is likely euonymus scale. And another great way that we can confirm that information is within that description of euonymus scale. It shows us that photo 71 in the book is going to be a picture of euonymus scale. So if we go to photo 71 at the back of the book on page 94 of the PDF, we'll see a picture of what euonymus scale looks like. And that's typically going to match very closely to the type of damage that we're seeing on our plants. So, what did you think? It's not a perfect way to find information, but again, this is a great way to really narrow down some of the potential problems with our trees and shrubs that we experience commonly in the Kansas landscape. So if you want to drop in the chat a number 1 through 4 on how you're feeling, we'll move right along to the next resource, but hopefully no matter how you're feeling, you at least aren't asleep yet.
Okay, so resource number 3 is the Kansas Garden Guide. And the Kansas Garden Guide is really focused on vegetable crops. It's a great resource for beginner gardeners. If I have someone come into my office that wants to start a garden for the first time, this is the perfect publication for them. But it's also really helpful for experienced gardeners as well. So it gives you great advice for growing a home garden in Kansas, which we know is no easy feat. So this video kind of shows you a little bit of what the publication looks like. It's a really nice, colorful book. It was recently updated in 2023 to be now almost 200 pages. You can view the whole thing online, free as a PDF if you're comfortable reading on your phone or tablet or laptop, or you can purchase a hard copy as well from the local extension office or the bookstore. So the next, yes, this shows the chapters of the book. It's a really great all-in-one resource. There's lots covered in this book. One of my favorite chapters is that improving soil health chapter. It goes over things like using cover crops, which I think has been really popular in the last couple of years, as well as how to take a soil sample and how to properly fertilize the garden. But the chapter I want to dive deeper into today is chapter 10, insect and pest management, and that's on page 81 through 84 of the book. And this is such an important chapter because we know insect populations can multiply so quickly in the garden. And if we can identify them quickly and control them quickly, we'll have better success. So this is a helpful chapter to kind of troubleshoot, again, what's going on with your plant. It has the common pests and then the plants that they typically occur on, and really great pictures on how to identify those pests. The chapter also goes over plant protection, how to scout for the insects, physical and mechanical control, as well as using pesticides or using beneficial insects. Okay, so here's a look at one of those charts. It has around 20-ish of the most common insects that we see in our Kansas gardens, as well as their susceptible host plants. So like Matthew, I have an example here. We're going to test your knowledge. So what is wrong with this plant? The host plant here is a broccoli plant. The symptoms we're seeing leaves with holes in them. So we know we have some sort of damage from an insect that has chewing mouth parts that munches on the leaves. And then we also might see damage to the heads of the broccoli. And then in the next picture, this is just a real big hint for you. I gave you every picture of each life cycle or each cycle of the insect's life. So it starts, the adult is a white butterfly with black dots on its wings, and then it lays a cream colored egg. You might even see the chrysalis. And then here in the bottom right corner is, of course, the caterpillar, which is what is causing that extensive damage to our plants. So if we go back to our chart there, page 83 of the Kansas Garden Guide, we can see that our culprit is the imported cabbage worm. And it does look pretty close. You might have picked out this cabbage looper. They are very close looking, and we might even see them both on our broccoli at the same time. But the treatment is pretty similar. This one, we can go ahead and look again at our original picture. And I went ahead and circled the caterpillars there because they do really camouflage themselves so well. They kind of line up with the leaf veins sometimes, and it's hard to see them. But here we have multiple sizes of the caterpillar, so you can see smaller ones clear up to a more mature caterpillar. At maturity, they can reach 1.25 inches long and really start to cause some destruction to our plants. So there's good information in the garden guide, but we also have a great fact sheet on controlling cabbage worms. Okay, another example here. This plant is a squash plant. I have two pictures. This one on the left is showing the insect, and then the one on the right is showing the damage that it causes. So we're seeing some yellow, brown spots on the leaves. It is probably wilting as well. We're probably seeing lack of vigor on the plant. Just our squash is not doing well. So what is the culprit? Okay, so again, I'm giving you a big hint here. Here is the adult insect. And again, this bottom right picture, that is the underside of the leaf. We always want to scout our plants really well and check the undersides of the leaves because that's where those insects tend to congregate, because that's where they're protected from our crazy Kansas wind and sun and weather. So they like to hide, and that's where they will lay their eggs as well most of the time. So on our chart, page 84 of the Kansas Garden Guide, we can see our culprit was squash bugs. So they're a big problem in Kansas. I know I've had them in my garden. They are true insects, so they use their piercing and sucking mouth parts to remove juices from the plant, which really causes our plants to wilt and not do well. So then if we go back to that first picture, I circled it here for you. In case you missed it the first time, but there were some insect eggs there along the veins. There's reddish brown eggs are what the squash bug lays. And then up in the right corner, those are the nymphs of the insect, which is kind of the baby insects. And they're actually soft-bodied insects. So this is the perfect stage to go ahead and treat them before they become full-grown adults with that hard shell. Okay, so the next chapter I want us to look at is the plant diseases chapter, which is chapter 12. So if you want to go to page 91 through 114, this chapter covers plant disease management, plant protection, as well as using pesticides for disease control. It also has a very nice table of the common diseases and environmental stresses we see on our vegetable crops. So it's a great way to identify those issues. And this one is broken up by specific host plants. So if you're having an issue on your sweet corn, you can go straight to the sweet corn section and kind of limit it down from there. So it's a really nice chart. So, okay, again, we have a quiz here. What is wrong with our plant? This is a tomato plant. It's not the best picture, but the symptoms here are that the leaves are curling and cupping. They're kind of thickened. Even the stems are starting to twist and curl. So if we go to page 112, so this is the tomato section of the chart, and I will tell you tomatoes have the most issues. It seems like that they get a lot of environmental issues and disease issues. But this correlates with herbicide injury. So there's some really great information here of how to identify that, and then as well as how to manage the condition. One thing I always tell people to look for is, do all your tomatoes look like this? If we're seeing damage across the board, our tomatoes, potatoes, grapes are all very sensitive to herbicide drift. So the next slide, I wanted to kind of compare it here to physiological leaf roll. I feel like a lot of people see this happen on their tomatoes in spring to summer, and they think their neighbor sprayed and that they have herbicide drift. So you can see the pictures are very different. This one, the leaves are more curled, not really twisting. And this is a physiological disorder. So it's due to environmental stress. The plant is rolling up its leaves to reduce the surface area to try to survive those stressful conditions. So thankfully, it's a very temporary condition that will often correct itself once we get more moderate weather. Okay, then my favorite part of the garden guide is pages 133 through 191. These are full page summaries of each vegetable crop. So you can see it starts at asparagus and goes all the way to watermelon. Um, and then I just screenshotted a couple of these pages to show you. Page 175 is the rhubarb guide, and I actually used this guide this year because we were trying to get some rhubarb established. So this is your go-to if you've never grown a crop before. Go to this page and it's going to tell you everything you need. It's going to have variety considerations. When should I plant my rhubarb? How do I space it? Is crop rotation important? How do I care for it? Even information on harvesting the rhubarb. So really helpful. The next slide just shows another screenshot. This one's the sweet corn page. I thought it had some really great recommendations there for what varieties to use. And if you aren't interested in the whole garden guide, you could go into your extension office and I'm sure they'd print off the sweet corn page for you if you're just interested in a few of the crops. And then the last couple pages of the guide are calendars. There's a planting calendar and a harvesting calendar. This one is the planting calendar, and those brown boxes are your primary expected planting dates in Kansas. So they vary a little bit, but this is still a good guide of when to get your crops in the ground. So if we go look down here at sweet potatoes, we can see that the end of May clear into all of June is a great time to plant your sweet potatoes. So this is a calendar I use all the time. I actually have it laminated at our community gardens here in Post Rock District. Okay, so resource number 4 is the school garden guide. And this is actually 2 documents or 2 publications. The first one is Considerations and Resources for School Garden Design. And that one is really good if you are an educator wanting to get a school garden started. So we'll put that link in the chat. But the one we're going to focus on today is called Garden Templates and Plant Choices for Kansas School Gardens. And even though it sounds like it's very geared toward school gardens, and it kind of is, it's also very relevant for home gardeners as well. These templates are great to use in your own garden. So you can scan the QR code and follow along on the PDF if you're interested. And the next slide, I have a video kind of what the document looks like. So there's lots of templates on here that are a great way to lay out your garden, and they're divided by growing season, which is really helpful. So this is a great resource again for a new gardener because sometimes it's overwhelming when you don't know what to plant or how close to plant them together, things like that. So this gives you great options of when, where, and how to plant those crops. So this is an example. This is one of the fall gardening templates. Um, each template is a 4x8 garden. Each foot is marked by those grid lines, and a colored block that fills the whole foot is expected to be about 1 foot wide at maturity. And then those kind of bolded dotted lines are where you would seed or plant the crop. So it's showing you exactly how to space. This is one of the simple templates, so all of these crops are going to be direct seeded. And then each template comes with a table. So the next slide shows the table. And then this lists all the vegetables that were in that template and then when to plant them. So this was a fall template. So we're planting in mid-August through early September. And then you can see most of those were seeded directly into the garden. And then there's nice variety notes. So some of the varieties they recommend to use an early maturing variety. And then I also really like that they give you alternative plants. So each template has an alternative plant guide for the garden. So let's say I don't like spring radishes. I don't want to put those in my garden. Well, I can plant kohlrabi, salad turnips, even pansies to replace that. So they're very customizable. Okay, so here's just another example. This one's one of the spring templates. This one is a little bit more complex. So that means that there is some pre-work needed. We got to start some seeds indoors or by transplants. And then the circles are, again, how big the crop is expected to grow. And then it also comes with a chart and it tells you the planting range again. So for the lettuce, they're saying to start the seeds indoors in mid-February. So it's really foolproof. These are great templates, and they're not just for getting lots of produce. It's also very visually interesting gardens, which I think is fun. And then lastly, this guide also has some connections for each vegetable crop. So towards the back, and then I screenshotted one of those for you here. So this is the turnip page, and I thought it had some really fun information. So it says that turnips might not be the most popular vegetable with kiddos, but it's really easy to grow in the garden. You can get from seed to harvest in about 38 days. So it really keeps the kids' attention, keeps my attention as well, because I know I'm a very impatient gardener. But so there's great learning connections as well on these pages. All right.
Awesome. We know not everybody's going to be a book person, and we've talked about quite a few books here. Most of us have our cell phone in our pocket every day, and so that's what plant resource number 5 is. And that's what we're just going to touch real quick on plant ID apps. There are a lot of different plant ID apps out there, and it's really important to use the right plant ID app. Because there's so many options, Michigan State actually started researching the effectiveness and accuracy of our plant ID app starting in 2018, and since then have evaluated 16 different apps. What they're doing is they're using their students and classes to photograph known weeds and known plants from their labeled demonstration gardens and recording the accuracy of those results. And the QR code and article here in the chat will give you more information, but what's really fascinating about this is the accuracy of these apps. Time and time again, Picture This rates as the #1 highest and most accurate plant ID app for giving us factual information about what plant we're dealing with. On the low end of that spectrum is actually Google Lens, has the least accuracy. And iNaturalist, Plant Story, PlantNet, PlantIn, they all kind of fall somewhere in between. To really kind of dive deeper into the accuracy of this information and why it's important, the green lines there show you what percentage of the time the Plant ID app was accurate in giving us both the genus and the species of the plant, essentially accurately telling us what is this plant down to the species level. The gray bars there show us the times where it was accurate, but not necessarily 100%. Either it gave us the correct genus, but not the right species, or it gave us a species, but not the right genus. And so the information was sort of right, but not entirely right. So the important thing I want you to take away from this picture here in this graph is that only 72, 73% of the time was picture this accurate on the results. For the most part, the majority of our apps actually fell into an accuracy of 30 to 40% accuracy of giving us 100% correct information. Even when we consider the gray bars here, our results are really only about 50% accurate for most of these apps, meaning that 50% or more of the time they're giving us the wrong information about what plant it is. Picture this, in their research has been the reigning champion for the highest level of accuracy for the past 6 years. And again, as these AI models and different apps change, so does their accuracy. But I think the bottom line is when we're using our plant ID apps, no plant identification app is perfect. Regardless of which one you choose, you always want to double check the answers against sites and research based information you can trust. So we mentioned the Missouri Botanical Garden, for example. That's a great way to be able to take the information you find on your app and plug it back into a trusted resource to verify, do these pictures look like this plant? And is this actually what I'm finding in my landscape? Because the average accuracy of these apps really is very, very varied. And that's anywhere from 30 to 70% accurate. And so we always want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and making sure that we double check what some of those apps are telling us with research-based information we can trust. I know I was really surprised that some of these apps weren't more accurate, and they continue to do this research each and every year, and those results do change. But again, it's important to always verify that information that we're getting.
Okay, so then we're just going to go over a few other helpful resources that we use quite frequently. One of my favorites is the Kansas Mesonet website. It is a weather data website. You can see all these little dots across Kansas are where there's a weather station that is recording temperature, humidity, precipitation, wind. And then you can also pull historical data. So that's what this chart is on the bottom. I live in Mitchell County, so I pulled the historical data from May. I really love to look at the rainfall. I'm always checking how much rainfall did we get. There's also really great information on soil temperature. So that's helpful to look at in early March and April when we're trying to get some things into the garden. The next is Insects of Kansas. This is a book that is my go-to for figuring out what bugs we're dealing with in the garden. Most extension offices will have this if you want to come in and take a look at those. We also really like this turfgrass weed control for professionals book. It has good color photos of weeds that we might be dealing with in the landscape. It is put out by Purdue University, but K-State was one of the contributors for this publication. If you grow fruit at home in Kansas or the Midwest, this production guide is really helpful. It goes over proper planting techniques, maintenance practices, cultivar recommendations. So it's great for someone starting out with a home orchard or home fruit production. The Weeds of the Great Plains is a really nice, thick, hard covered book, but it goes over all the weeds we might see along the roadsides or in pastures, wildflowers. It's put out by the Nebraska Department of Agriculture. It's a really helpful book. And then Wildflowers and Grasses of Kansas. This is a field guide. It's put out by the University Press of Kansas. It's over 500 pages with really nice colored photos. And I love that this book is split into sections by color. So if you're looking for a purple wildflower, you can flip to the purple chapter. And it's really easy to identify what plants you're looking at. There's also a website that goes along with that. We'll put that in the chat. And last but not least, always feel free to reach out to your local extension agent. We are here to help. There is an extension office in every single county in Kansas. There's 105 of us around. So we are happy for you to stop by, bring in a plant sample, bring in pictures. We are happy to answer your gardening questions.
So, to close out today's presentation, we're just curious, after hearing some of this information, how's your perspective changed on finding research-based information? Hopefully you learned something new that was helpful, that will help you continue to grow, garden, and thrive more successfully in the landscape and garden in the future. So feel free to put in the chat what you learned or how your perspective changed today as a result of the presentation. We want to thank you for being here today. Hopefully, this was the world's best Zoom for you. And again, we would be more than happy to entertain a few questions with the time that we have left today.
Yeah, first of all, great job, Matthew and Cassie. That was a fantastic presentation. Even though I'm an agent here in Topeka, I still feel like I learned something from you guys, so thank you. One of the questions we had in the chat was kind of interesting. So it was talking about the planting calendar that's there in the garden guide. How should somebody in the southeast corner of the state utilize that? I know in weed control and home lawns, it says that those gardeners in southeast Kansas need to put down their crabgrass preventer April 1st. Can we add 2 weeks as a rule of thumb? Add 2 weeks to those planting times for vegetable crops.
And that's a great question. And these recommendations are hard when you talk about the entire state of Kansas because eastern Kansas is always going to be a lot more wet and western Kansas is always going to be a lot more dry. Southern Kansas is always going to warm up a little bit quicker and earlier in the spring, and northern Kansas is a little bit slower. We actually cover quite a bit of USDA hardiness zones across the state, and so in general, the further south in Kansas you live, the probably the sooner some of those things could be planted. The further north you live, the later some of those may need to be planted. But it really is going to depend a little less on where you live and more on what those spring weather conditions are like. This year in spring, we had a lot of our weather about a month early, but we still had really late freezes and late frosts. And so it's really important that even if we do plan early, we are prepared and able to adjust if we dip down into cold weather or have freezes or frosts in the forecast.
Yep, that's the other thing that I added with that question is there's never going to be a silver bullet answer. Kansas, we can plan for one thing and then Kansas just throw us for a loop another direction.
For sure.
Another question, are the apps that you guys recommended free? I know most of them are, but some of them require subscriptions, is that right?
They may, yes. And picture this, for example, they have both a free and a paid version. They are very persistent in trying to get you to buy the paid version when you're using the free version. I have the free version downloaded on my phone, so as long as you're able to find the X to close the ad to buy it, there is that free version. And it's interesting, the research has actually looked at is there a difference in the accuracy of the paid versions and the free versions? And so that's a part of the story I'd encourage you to go check out in that article online.
Well, awesome. I think that cleans out the Q&A for us. Thank you guys again for this presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today.
All right. Well, normally we have more questions than we have time for. However, our speakers did a wonderful job today with this presentation. We will be sure to link several of the articles related to this session on the website. So the links that were shared through the chat will be shared on the website tomorrow. We hope that these resources will help to answer your questions, but if you need additional information, please contact your local K-State Extension office. Once again, thank you for joining our K-State Garden Hour series hosted by Kansas State Extension. We are so glad you could be here today to learn about maximizing your garden success with extension resources. You can visit the K-State Garden Hour website to view our recorded Garden Hour archive or to make a tax-deductible donation to support the continuation of this webinar series. This session was recorded and will be posted to the website by tomorrow afternoon. After this webinar ends today, you will receive a prompt to take an evaluation survey. Please fill this out. We greatly appreciate your feedback. I know as a speaker, I always use that to help improve future presentations. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at gardenhour@ksu.edu. Thank you again. We hope you continue to tune in each month. Have a wonderful week.